Welcome to the Get It Done podcast. I'm your host, Jimi Ryan. Today we have Mark McMinn. He is a top 1% realtor in the nation, works at Fathom Real Estate. He runs two teams in the metro Atlanta area. And I know him as a friend, but also a husband and father. Mark, welcome to the Get It Done podcast.
So to quickly differentiate, we are not husbands with each other, just in case you
No.
heard that and didn't connect. Jimmy and I are not married. Okay.
we are not. We are married to women that are,
we have spouses. We do not live in the same house. We are not recording this live here in the same room. We're off to a start, baby. We're off to a start. You had no idea.
Thanks for correcting me on that. I mean, maybe I was tripping up on the top 1% in the nation. But I do know you as a friend, not a husband. Sorry, a husband, a great husband.
There you go. I'll take it. Sold.
And a great father. Well, brother, I'm really happy that we can just jump right into this. Man. So, is there anything that I know I gave you a brief edification there, but look, is there anything that I missed? Anything else that you'd want to get out to the world?
Man, a big part of my world. So our business encompasses everything from ground up development, flipping, working with investors, personally investing. That's been a big thing for me over the past 18 months is my personal portfolio and, putting your money where your mouth is. And so that's a lot of my world. My wife, she teaches in a private academy. She loves it, man. She's a rock star teacher finishing up her master's. And my kids are super into sports. My son is basketball, baseball, jujitsu. My daughter's really into dance. So, dude, we're 1,000 miles an hour as a family. And our tension is always, the balance around having huge aspirations in our business, but equally always putting our family first and making sure that we're winning at home before we're winning outside. So.
Absolutely. And, we met at Amplify where we got the chance to really, talk about some real stuff. And look, brother, I really do. I know you as a very caring husband and father. I mean, I look at you and I think that's how I would just brand you. And it's because I know how important that piece of your life really is to you. And what I want to do is, well, here, I want to set this up. So really the Get It Done podcast is all about the come up story. Mm-hmm. And look, you're a top 1% realtor in the nation right now, but look, you didn't start there. No. And we use Elon Musk as an example. So he has a story from, $1 million to $1 billion and then billions, and that's great. Yep. But what we're looking for is the 0 to 1 million story. That's generally where people really have their roots and, what really built them into the person that they are today. Best place to start with that, Mark, is where were you born and what was your early childhood family life like?
Yeah. And I'm going to give you that answer. I want to give an asterisk beside what you just said before I go into my answer, because it could be the most important thing that someone takes out of this. People who have an entrepreneurial bent right now, Elon Musk is like the super sexy name to draw into because of what he's done. He's built several companies, been immensely successful, and will continue to do so. But on the flip side of that, when you look at his personal life, his marriages, his kids, no one talks to him. He has no relationship with family. He has nothing besides his businesses. So I want all of us as entrepreneurs to absorb that and ask ourselves, while it's easy to have the Instagram jealousy of what he has built and what he is doing, ask yourself, what do you really, really want? Because I'm going to answer the question as given, and you're going to see my framework. For me, I grew up in Metro Atlanta. My dad was a pastor. He was multiple generations going back of pastors. And for me, that was just kind of the route to be a McMinn, was to work in church world, nonprofit space, and did that for a while out of college, that for 10 years, loved it, but found myself continually as the guy who would go in, grow something at a significant rate, and frankly, then get bored. Okay. Of the day-to-day minutia and the slogging through that particular job for someone like me, who actually is more introverted, began to really be a weight that I found was not suited for my strengths. And blessing for me, I've always valued coaching. Like, my philosophy was, if Tiger Woods, if Chipper Jones, if Michael Jordan has a coach, who am I to say I shouldn't have that? And had some great coaches around me who helped me come to this position of saying, man, your strengths, your skill sets, your ambitions, and your passions all exist in spaces where you're not able to really flex them in this church space. And so while you may love the church, it, getting a paycheck from here as your 9 to 5 isn't the best version of you. It's a good version of you. It's not the best version of you. And so my wife and I made the really hard decision to say, okay, we're going to jump out of the 9 to 5 salary insured grind, and we're going to go believe that something really big can happen. And that was back in 2017. Man, had 3 months of nothing, was totally regretting every bit of decision to go into this industry, and was out, I had multiple offers on jobs I could just, pop in over to. And I played college sports. I've always had like a very tenacious, competitive spirit. And frankly, that was the one thing that kept me anchored during this time, was just the unwillingness to fail. Like success, and hear this. This is good, man. This is good. Success became a moral decision for me, no different than it is wrong to kill, it is wrong to steal. Me being successful was on that same level, that I literally owed it to my wife. I literally owed it to my kids. I owed it to my extended family for me to reach every ounce of potential I had in this industry. And I knew it was significant. I knew it from day one. I can step in and kill this. I've just got to figure the game out. And so long story short, year number 1 was a little over 30 transactions. Number 2, we doubled it. And we've kept about that same rhythm since then.
Father, that's beautiful. So many places I can go to it. I want to jump back to the asterisk about Elon Musk. Maybe I should change my start. My goodness. You're right.
Well, bro, I used to be the same way. Like I would put him on this pedestal because I respect him so much as both an innovator, an entrepreneur, a businessman, someone who philosophically doesn't fit into one category. Like there's so much I respect about him, but at the same time, I have to check myself and say, while I respect, I don't want his life. I don't want it. And I had to put myself in proper context to understand that, and then paint out the picture, ask the hard question. Okay, well, what do I want? If I don't want that, I want elements of that, then what is that? What is that melting pot, that soup of Mark McMinn's life look like? If I take some here and I dab it in, then I need some here. And it allowed me and my wife together to really go through a lot of those conversations, because frankly, the front end of my career was that Elon Musk-esque type mindset, that grind above all else. Like I have a significant memory. We were living out in Bethlehem, Georgia, a little bed community of Athens. And it was one of my son's birthday parties. And I remember a lead, popping in through our system. And what did I do? I moseyed out of the party because I had to go service that lead. I had to pick up the phone, and I know the numbers. Like if you don't get a hold of someone within 8 minutes, you're probably not going to convert them. And so sorry, birthday party, I got to go. And I look back on that and say, man, what a poor version of me. That's such a poor version. It's not something I'm proud of. It's not something I aspire to. But in that season, and there are always seasons, if a pendulum swings hard this way, it needs to swing hard back. And even to this day, there are weeks where my wife and I have a verbal conversation. Hey, sweetie, I'm going to be gone this week, and you're not going to see me until Saturday. I'm gone. But the pendulum has to then swing back. And for my first 12, 16 months in this industry, the pendulum just lived over here. And like a bank account, if you are always taking withdrawals, you're going to eventually reach that negative point. And eventually I did. It came to the space of, I'm not enjoying this. I'm still doing very well. Like if you looked at a P&L, if you looked at a sales sheet, you would see, man, Mark's out there killing it. But internally, it was that deep level of dissatisfaction about the life I was creating. My dollars in my bank did not represent the joy in my heart. And that was when I heard that Elon Musk thing, and that just kind of kept stirring inside of me. So
yeah. And look, and this is actually a common thing of like crazy top producers. They end up being terrible husbands and they get divorced. They end up being terrible fathers.
No doubt.
And it's because, well, listen, what's your number one? What is the center of your life?
That's right.
And if you make it your job, there's going to be a lot of other, things that suffer. And look, brother, me too. I've really struggled with this in the 13 years that I've done this. And it's just like, sometimes that pendulum, you don't even realize how far it is to the other side. It takes your wife maybe telling you, hinting you a couple of times, but then it really takes, I'm sure it's happened to you too. Is your wife just like, listen, this ain't good. What,
right, man. And it's always those like World War III moments in your marriage that it takes a lot of us who are that hyper focused blinders. Dude, I'm going to go crush this. I'm going to be recognized. I'm going to be significant. But when you put on those blinders, you don't see what you don't see. And so the two solutions to that is, number one, figure out how to take those off. And if you're not at that place of self-awareness, you better have somebody who loves you, cares for you, and is willing to say hard things around you to keep you from blowing your life up.
Let's speak to this a little bit, because I really think that that this is something that a lot of top producers really need to hear.
Agreed.
Really, it's like, who do you want to be? Do you, and who is your inner, most internal character? Do you identify as the person that, needs to call that lead within 8 minutes, that, is on their way to a vacation with their wife and is working in the lounge on their computer and has their mind completely off of the vacation and on their work? Is that the inner character that you want to be? Or do you want to be a great husband? Do you want to be a great father? What legacy do you want to live?
Yeah.
And I think that for me, truly, it's one of those things where it's tough to balance them. It's one of those things that I think a lot of people really fail at it.
Yeah.
What do you think that you have this figured out, or what do you think is what do you think that you've come up with as you have failed with it?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like a diamond. The more you turn it, the more it refracts and you see different things in new ways. And I think some true norths for me in this conversation have been, and I'll go back to the pastor of the last church I worked at. He had this brilliant image, man. Think of a baseball diamond: home plate, first base, second base, third base. And on each of those diamonds, we would put specifics beside them. And first base was our character, who we are as a person. Second base was community, our close knit relationships, people who can have honest conversation, who can encourage us, who admonish us. And then third base is competency. Now, and my son plays baseball. He's 8, and he's even beyond this, but we'll use him as an example. Okay. Let's say tomorrow at his baseball game, he gets a hit, slaps it to the outfield, and he runs to third base. Well, as a kid, like as a parent, you laugh, you're like, oh, shucks, that's so cute. But in adult world, if I was watching my Atlanta Braves tonight and I saw Marcelo Ozuna do that, I would not say, oh, that's cute. I would say, you freaking moron. Yeah. But in business world, we almost all do that. We run toward competency before we run toward character and community. We run the bases backward. And when we do that, it inevitably blows up, because the truth of our character always comes out. It takes different time for each of us to get there, but it always oozes out of us like sweat. It smells, it shows up, and it's unavoidable. And so for me, that's been number one, of always make sure I run the bases properly. And secondly, and I'll share a story. My dad passed when I was 20. It was a week before my 21st birthday. And at that funeral, among many, many things, man, one of the big lessons I took away, one of the life-altering truths of that moment was, it was me, it was my family who were sitting on the front row of that funeral, not the people who my dad pastored, not his best buddies, not anyone besides the McMinn family was on that front row. And what that showed me, what that reminded me of, and rewired my DNA and gave me a true north towards, was, man, don't forget who's most important. Like at the end of the day, that client that you're working so hard for, when it's your day, you're sitting in that box up front of that building, it's your family who's going to be at the front, not them. They probably won't even be there, And so put things in their proper context. Not saying they're not important, not saying that sale is not important. And I'm in no way saying those things. What I am saying is, have an understanding of the life that you want, and then build it backwards, and understand and do the hard work of realizing what it takes to get there, and what costs are you willing to deal with? What pain points, what pressure points are you willing to absorb to get to that place?
Yeah, brother. Begin with the end in mind is a principle. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That kind of reminds me of that. Brother, yeah, man, you're at the front seat. You're right. It also reminded me of a quote a good friend of ours, Rene Rodriguez, uses. I don't know if it's his quote or if he uses it. I'll have to source it. But pressure doesn't create character; it reveals it. And what are you doing? You're going, into competence. You have to get the character first, because otherwise, inevitably, you will fall under pressure. And
You
then
will.
your real why shows up. Are you doing this for the money? Are you doing this for $1 million? Are you doing this to be, the face of it? Or are you doing it because I'm doing this for my family? I'm doing this for the real reasons. And brother, I really love that. So many different places I could go with this. I actually want to touch on your dad for a minute.
Yeah.
And brother, like the first time I heard the story about your dad, I mean, it was hard for me not to cry. And you mentioned to me that, your dad passed just before you were 20. Talk about your dad and what he was like.
My dad was such a multifaceted person, right? Like I mentioned, he was a pastor, but on one end, he was the guy who had 2 doctorates, like was an adjunct professor at Oxford. And then he's a pastor at this mid-sized church in Metro Atlanta. And then he was just socks and sandals and dad New Balance white shoes, like he was that perfect convolution of all of these different little segments. And he managed them really, really well. And frankly, again, that's where I think I've learned a lot of that balance is just reflecting on observing him in those arenas. Because I remember many times where he was at my soccer practices, at my basketball games, at my baseball events. But I don't have this like collection of memories of dad never being there. And I do know inevitably he worked really freaking hard at his job and was very, very present there. And he was very present as a husband. And so he was a lot of those things. But if I could summarize it and kind of my true north and my parenting that I took from him is he was very, very consistent in his admonition of get better. And I'm paraphrasing that, but I'm proud of you, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. I'm proud of you because you're my son. Now we're going to go get better because that's who we are as a family. But my pride does not result from your performance. My pride is resulting from you are mine. And so as a kid, having that base of knowing I don't have to perform, even though I'm very, very competitive, and I need to be true to that. I need to be in spaces where there's a scoreboard because that's me at my best. But my parents' love and approval for me wasn't based on those things. And so that's the backdrop for who he was.
That's beautiful. And like here, I'm taking notes. Like I'm thinking like, man, do I tell my son that enough?
Dude, it challenges me every day. Every day.
And like, look, do you love them unconditionally? Of course you do. But if they're being a jerk, you gotta step in correction.
That's right.
And do that. But also you're getting better. How often did your dad say this to you?
Oh, daily. I have so many voicemails saved, even when I was in college, man, where I'd be in class and, hey, Mark, just calling to remind you, man, I love you. I'm proud of you, not because of who you are, because of what you are, because not because of what you do, but because of who you are. That was his rhythm.
What a great inspiration. And to all fathers out there.
That's right.
I mean, mothers too, just parents. This is what I think is required to be a good parent. You have to actually care and be just your words is be present and be consistent.
Yeah.
And not have it be strings attached. I really love that. I want to move to being a pastor. Now, your dad was a pastor, and if memory serves me correct, you went down that path.
For 10 years.
So you were a pastor. What made you get into it? And I mean, I know that like, look, your dad was doing this, but what I guess solidified that, look, I'm doing this. And then what made you get out?
So we'll go to college. I remember, freshman year was a math major, eventually shifted over to PR and advertising, like that marketing space. And that was my love. But I got involved in my local church, really, really neat church, local to our college town. And that turned into a, hey, man, like we would love to see you come on, just part-time, a few hours a week kind of thing. And it progressively rolled into a full-time thing while I was going back and adjusting my major to double major in Christian studies and PR and advertising. PR and advertising was like, I go to those classes and I love this. This over here was, well, I feel like I need to value this because of family history and kind of the inertia of that, but also so that I can be competent in this job that I'm actually doing. And so I just got caught in that undertow of it, if you will, not taking the negative connotation of it, but that's how it rolled out. I just kind of fell into it and it progressively rolled into something. And man, I loved the church. I was not the kid who was like super, super rebellious away from that religion and all of it. I loved my church. My church was making a big difference in people's lives, both inside and outside the walls. And that was significant for me. So spent 10 years in that, progressing from working with high school, middle school kids up to leading a few thousand people and overseeing big budgets and overseeing lots of staff and that kind of thing here in Metro Atlanta.
Wow.
But yeah, it was, man. I mean, for being sub 30 at the time, I was a senior leader at one of the largest churches in the nation, so.
Do you think you were ready for that? Do you think that I mean, I've spoken to a lot of pastors that have actually gotten out of it. I've spoken to a lot of young pastors,
Yeah.
and they felt as though after they got out of it, that they were kind of in a place where, I shouldn't be leading this. Did you ever have those voices of doubt, and did you tell them that they were lies, or was it more?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. When I was in it, absolutely not. Like my bark was bigger than my bite in a lot of ways. And that, again, huge aspirations and had a ton of drive and was very innovative and pushing the envelope and growing a campus. Like all that was happening. But internally, I just knew there were things about me that weren't in alignment. Like you feel it in your soul when you are there. And it's not a church thing. That's a people thing. When you are not at the space where your gifting, your skill set, your strengths are, when you are putting on a mask of somebody else and going and doing it, even if parts of that are genuine, when no one else does. And that was just the reality of a portion of my season. Even though a lot of good came out of the 10 years in ministry for me, I knew there's something off. Even if I couldn't put my finger on it, something is not right. There's a click in the engine, and I got to go sort this out. So
hope deferred makes the heart sick. And it seems as though you were just deferring it. And you felt sick inside. You felt that you were holding this back in some way, shape, or form. What did you get little hints along the way? Like, did you get little clues and being like, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right? Or did it all just like blow up?
Initially, it was the childish pointing a finger at an organization and saying, it's them, it's not me. Like, I'm right, I'm killing it, they need to get on board. And if they don't get on board with me killing it, then I'll just go somewhere else that does. Because this isn't, clearly we're not on the same page here. And so it was stop after stop after stop, for a 4-year, 5-year window where it was just like, hey, this is not aligning. And clearly look at my numbers and my math, and I'm doing my job. And so who here is not holding the weight, and who here needs to get on board, rather than me coming in and absorbing and learning the culture of the organization and fitting myself into that, but actually at a more true and honest scale, owning and realizing this just didn't me. And so from there, the blow up, if you will, which there wasn't, there's no negative, there's no bad blood, nothing like that. But the linchpin moment was me coming to a position of, okay, I'm grinding, I'm exhausted. Financially, I'm not where I need to be. And that's not a church's fault. That's me not aligning myself in a space where I could be. And for me to be honest with myself and like my future, like to be excited about it, and to be in a space where I am fulfilled in my day to day, I got to do something stupid. And that thing is go and have that entrepreneurial burst out of the gate and go and build something that I own, I am responsible for, and that I can leave to my family. So
I really love that. So you finally just exploded out of it. And then, come on, brother, real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, but really though, I mean, I'm not making fun of it. I'm only saying it because look, I know you had people make fun of you for that. Big time. Dude, there's no way.
I'm sure I still do, now I have enough people around me who love me and pat me on the back, but there's always side conversations. There's always people who have opinions. And at this stage of my life, maybe not previous seasons, at this stage of my life, man, I'm totally cool. Say what you want to, everybody can have opinion. That's awesome. I am very secure in me. And so knock yourself out, back then. Yeah, dude, when you're coming out of a space where your entire career is built on serving people and relationships and those pieces. Yeah, man. Any verbiage around that is stinging if you will, And so if you don't have that moxie and that guts and that ultimately that self-awareness to know, nope, this is me, I'm good. Then yeah, it can crumple you in a hot minute. But
Do you think that you needed that feeling of I don't want to call it hopelessness, but do you think you needed to have that feeling in your heart after 10 years of being a pastor? Do you think you needed to experience that so that you could stomach that?
I think I had to walk through being successful while not being fully satisfied. I think that had to happen, whether it was in the church arena or somewhere else. I had to go through that pain point of, in my mind, cresting a high level mountain and still not having it, having that thing. Because when you get when you get to the top of a large mountain, you are anticipating the feeling of, I did it. Like, I did it. And yet for me, every time it was just like, cool, where's the next mountain? I'm done with this one. Like, let's crank it out. We got other ones to chase. And there was the settledness wasn't there. And yes, I had to have that 100%.
A good quote is, sometimes you have to get to the top of the mountain to realize there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And you get out and you look around and there's nothing there. And but okay, what's the next mountain? And I mean, but you didn't feel like you actually climbed Mount Everest. You're like, well, man, that was easy.
Yeah, totally. In hindsight, you're like, oh, cool, that was Stone Mountain, which in my area is like not even classified as a mountain. It's not
right.
even tall enough to actually be that. But when you're in it, it feels like it is. And the lesson is, okay, why am I not satisfied by this? Why do I need the next mountain? Why do I need that next big thing? And again, when you do the hard work of personal introspection, you often find out the reason that is not satisfying is because it never can be. That accomplishing the next thing, when you're that driven type A, it's actually the journey and the struggle that you're wired to love. Number one, not the actual accomplishment. But number two, you also find your real joy, your real satisfaction in your life typically comes from other relationships, not from accomplishments. That it's people where we find relaxation. It's in intimacy and relationship where we find that settledness. And that's what I had to go through.
So I really love that. A lot of brother, the journey and the struggle. I'm just taking notes. I'm like, man, you're right. And look, you mentioned though that you're introvert, in a lot of ways.
Totally.
I share the same thing. A lot of times people are surprised by that. I like alone time. I like quiet time. But you're right. You want to have intimate, real, actually real relationships where you can totally let it all out and not have any fear of anybody saying anything about it. And
that's right.
I love that you had to get to that point where you figured out like what is real and who do I want to be. What did I talk about this a lot with a lot of my close friends, is that what had to die in you? Like what was the old you that had to die, and what was the hardest part about it? Like what to create the new you, the old you has to die. What was the hardest part of that process?
The hardest part initially was security. Like, again, when you are at the time 29, 29-year-old has accomplished a lot from a resume standpoint, the insecurity of abandoning that in a space where you are respected and revered and can walk into a lot of rooms, the insecurity of abandoning that is very, very difficult. And so that was a really, really big one. But I think internally, the other really big piece was, okay, I am abandoning a heritage in a lot of ways. Even though I wasn't like abandoning my faith, I was abandoning the synonymous nature of being a McMinn and leading in a local church context. And while that on paper was not scary, the larger realities of what will people say? Like, I know a lot of people in this area, and there is an identity piece of those two that I am breaking. And I know there's going to be comments around that, even outside of like, you're a realtor, like, really, it was just the leaving that industry because so many people loved and respected my family as a result of that context. And so saying, nope, I'm going to break that. I'm going to leave that. And that progressively led to me in a lot of different spaces of my life, finding joy and satisfaction and being honest about who I am, what I believe, and where I'm going, and not being apologetic about that. Not feeling the need to give a precursor, just boom, this is who I am, and I'm good with it. And if you're not, that's okay.
Bro, this is why we're friends. I'm telling you, you were just so authentically real. Like there's no hiding. It's just
no,
what you see
not
is
anymore.
what you get. And look, the hardest part for you was killing that old identity that you clung to forever, that was bringing you pain and wasn't bringing you fulfillment and the highest form of satisfaction that deep down all of us really crave.
Yeah, we do.
I want to transition to real estate. So,
Yeah,
brother, you haven't been doing it forever. You
No,
haven't been doing it forever.
no.
But look, you're top 1% in the nation. You're crushing it with it. And look, I think that it strives from like, look, I had to help myself before I can help other people.
Yeah.
And I see how passionate you are about, just helping people do this.
Mm.
Would you say that that's the reason why you did it? Because you can help people in really challenging times? Or, I mean, I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, what about this industry actually fulfills you?
Yeah, I think there is a multitude of answers in that. So I'll pick out a few. Number one, it was going back to college and a self-awareness of knowing when I was in my marketing classes, when I was in PR, advertising, like when I was in those spaces, I loved being there. The clock never moved. I could have spent hours on end involved and consuming and absorbing these philosophies and these places of psychology and understanding mindset and conversion. I loved it. And so I took myself back to those moments. I took myself back to college when I was selling Cutco and in a summer made $42,000 in the middle of the worst recession we've ever seen. And then bought my first house with cash from slinging kitchen knives, I took, and the joy that I got out of that, how much I loved doing it. So that was number one. Number two, from a success standpoint, relationship standpoint, I knew that I can win people. I knew that that was in my skill set of being able to be in a moment, lock eyes, and earnestly actually care about that person's future and want good things for them. In this industry, and without giving a long story, when we bought our house in Bethlehem, I referenced earlier, we had an agent, a good person. Like I'm not going to bag on him and his character per se, but we had seen 8 houses at the time, couldn't find anything we liked. It wasn't aligning. And he looked at us, we were all in the car riding together, and he looked at us, I won't use his name, but he said, what can I do to help? And you could hear kind of some exasperation in his voice. And I was like, man, let's just go back and let's start at the beginning. Let's revisit our list. What are we not seeing? What do we need to realign on? What do we need to adjust? And I said, I'm actually going to push that question back to you. What do you need? We're kind of trusting you as a guide. And his response was, I just need you to pick a house so I can get paid. And what was said in that moment was, my success, my personal benefit from this is more important than yours as my client. And that became a word picture for what I wanted out of this industry, because I understood that individual knew a lot that I didn't know. And they also were the one directing the entire process. When we're talking about an average Joe who's making $42,000 a year, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And so I'm trusting this person for some really, really big stuff. And I just now feel like they threw me out of the car while we're going 80 miles down the road, And so that was a very marking thing for me in this industry of, I feel like there's a lot of spaces where the average person is really getting screwed over and they don't know better, that when an offer comes in, they don't know the logistics. They don't know when they should push or not push, or how much money gets left, or who should be responsible, because they're just trusting the person on the other end of the line. They're just trusting that their benefit and their interest is being cared for, when, if we can be honest, in my opinion, often it's not to the full degree, to 100%. It's not. And for our team and I, that's been a very, very core piece of who we are, that we will always, to the nth degree, look out for our client. Like our little around the office verbiage is, man, how many Chick-fil-A meals did you negotiate for your family? You know, even if it's an extra like $300 we got out of repair negotiations, or an extra $250 out of closing cost, we look at it, hey man, we just bought that family dinner for the next month, dude. That is because it gets that real and that intimate for us. Because money is not intimate, money's not real, but putting food on a family's table, paying for a kid to go to a soccer camp, like that's real life stuff. And that's what we're doing, because we
Look,
want to push as hard as we can for our people.
and look, people aren't going to come to your funeral and sit at the front row and say, hey man, he made this much money.
That's
Sorry.
right, dude. That's right.
They're not going to remember you for that.
That's right.
All right. That's beautiful. Well, Mark, I want to really be super respectful of your time. And there's a few questions that I ask everybody. This has just been such a fire interview. I'm going to have you back on. But
yeah, dude, anytime.
I'm going to start with the first question. Was there ever a time you felt like giving
up? Bro, all the time. All the time. Anytime as an entrepreneur, you reach a point of mental exhaustion. Often mental exhaustion comes before the physical exhaustion. It's the same in sports. It's the same in life. We reach our mental barriers first. And there's been so many times where even if it's a micro version of that, of I don't want to do lead gen anymore. I've got enough past clients where I can just do referral and sit and cruise. That small example, or the big stuff of like, dude, I can go to the marketing world. I have friends who are in political marketing. I could have a 6-figure job and just walk. You feel those all the time because pressure is always synonymous with leadership. If you are a leader, you are feeling pressure, and pressure pushes down on your emotions and your spirit every single day. And so without having that true north, that self-awareness to know who you are, why you are there, and why you're pushing forward, you do crumble. And so, of course, absolutely, I have those, no doubt.
I love that. That's just real. Do you feel like you ever got a big break?
I don't feel like anyone gets big breaks. I think those are a lie that we tell ourselves when we are not creating future opportunities for ourselves. That everyone's life, we look at them in a moment. Like if you think about a brick wall, we focus on one brick rather than seeing the entirety of the thousands of bricks that make up that wall. And we isolate that one brick and see, that's it. They had that thing, when in actuality, no, that's part of a much larger picture where there's been a lot to get us to that place. And so I say all the time, there are plenty of people who want to be where I am, but they are not willing to go through what I went through to get here. And so big break, I think that's kind of garbage. I think that philosophy is a weak mindset.
I just love it, man. That's just fire, man.
Dude, it's true. It's freaking truth.
But it really is. It's just like, look, it's persistent, consistent effort over time. Phil Treadwell says this a lot, mortgage marketing expert. And, you know, it's true. Like you can't just have like you just one sale, you know, it's not just one thing.
Never.
And by the way, I'm a dad. And oh, by the way, you know, there's all these things. You have to show up, work, put in the work.
That's right.
It's hard, but you got to do it every day. And that's how you get the results. I love it.
Momentum is always going, dude. It's either pushing you backwards or forwards, but momentum never stops. And so again, it goes back to the beginning of what do I want out of my life? And then pushing the right buttons to get you to those places. Like for an example, when I go on vacation with my family, last week we were in Florida, had a great time, loved it. The momentum of my business goes backward because I'm not in the 9 to 5, but the momentum of my family and intimacy with my wife goes forward. And those are trades that I have decided to make. And so the loss, I could feel a loss internally in my spirit of, oh man, I'm not able to be involved. I'm not leading locally. I'm not guiding in the day-to-day. I've made the decision. That's a good trade. It's not a trade I can make every day or should make every day, but it's a good trade for this moment.
100%. Wow. I love that. If you were to do it all over again, Mark, what would you change?
Brother, that is one of the hardest questions I've ever gotten, because my nature is so anti-regret, because we never know. I don't know the decisions I made yesterday, how they are going to impact future. And that's true for all of us going back to the very beginning of our existence. We don't know the future impact of those moments. And so that's a really hard one for me to wrap my head around. But I'll answer it this way. If I were, and I do, when I coach younger agents, the things I tell them to do are based off of it. And it's kind of been the theme of this conversation, what they want out of it. For some agents, because it's not my job to tell someone what they should or should not want. If they want a life where they are making $54,000 and they get to basket weave on the weekends and go to their kids' baseball games and whatever, if that's their version of happiness, then dude, I am so all happiness is the currency of a life well lived and many, many times. And so I'm never going to tell you what should make you happy. I am going to tell you, you damn well better figure out how to make that a reality. That is what is most important. And so if you're going to talk about regret, do it in a way that says, if I could give someone affection and coaching towards their life, this is what I would do if I started over. But I'm never going to bemoan the hard seasons or the bad decisions, because they've affected who I am now and they're affecting my future in ways I don't even know about. So,
brother, what a great perspective. Any adversity that you overcome is good for you. I've learned that with a lot of people that I've interviewed, and
that's right.
And that's man, just dropping the fire, man. I love it. So to set up the last question here, Mark, there is a young Mark out there. Maybe they're struggling with balancing work and life, being a husband, father, being a great real estate agent. Maybe they're a pastor. Maybe they're falling out of love with it. Maybe their parents died. Maybe they're doing it for all of the wrong reasons. What advice would you give to someone looking to get it done?
Man, I would say number one, counseling is a really good thing. Like having a coach, having a counselor sit down and help guide you and navigate you through life is really, really important, because you have blind spots that you are not aware of. And you need to see those things so that you can make the best decision for your future as you craft what you want out of your life. Because going back to your last question, there is nothing that scares me more than being at the end of my life and being regretful. Because the only thing I can't get more of is time. That's the only thing I cannot make enough money to go and buy. And so number one, go get a coach, go get a counselor, get someone who is going to speak into your spaces that you are not even aware of. And number two is truly put a premium on happiness, and not flighty happiness, but genuine, fulfilled happiness. What do you want out of your life? What do you love doing? What energizes you? What brings you joy? What makes you strong? And do more of those things. Like, just do more of those things. Don't avoid the hard moments. The hard moments are what build character, but be self-aware to the point where you find yourself in seasons and habitual moments that bring you life and bring you happiness.
Don't live a life of regret. Search for happiness. Brother, those are just great words to live by. All right. I want to thank Mark for joining us today. I want to thank our audience as well. And if anybody was to reach out to Mark, what would be the best way for them to connect?
Fastest way to reach me is just through social. You can find me Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at 11 p.m. scrolling through, looking at cat videos. You can find me on all those different spots. Love to chat, man. If I can add value to your journey, I get the chance to talk with a lot of agents and lenders and walking through our marketing processes and video and stuff. More than pumped to do that. I'm an abundance mindset person. There's way more than enough for everybody to do well. And so it's an honor to get to share a little bit about what we're doing. So yeah, man.
Yeah,
find me on social.
I encourage anybody to follow Mark. Your videos are just pure fire. I mean, you literally you're at a listing a house, and you're telling a story about the neighborhood and how it all is, and it's just, brother, you are killing it in the social arena. And I encourage really anybody, if you're looking for someone who does it right, Mark's definitely one of those people, and I can't endorse that enough. All right. This has been the Get It Done podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And if you have liked the show, took some value from it, tell a friend, write a 5-star review, hit that subscribe button. All those things make a huge difference in helping us reach more people. Once again, I am Jimi Ryan. This has been the Get It Done podcast. Thanks so much for listening.